from meals that looked more like horror sets to seasoning that doubles as hand wash. Here are Indian street food moments that should be illegal, starting with this kitchen chaos that deserves its own warning label. It is less about food and more about stubborn confidence. Hands moving like permission was never invented. The energy screams boldness, the kind that never checks for consequences. Appetite? Missing in action, replaced by a side of uneasy laughter.
Liquid. देहात में हेलीकॉप्टर सुना आपको?
From dirty fusion to deadly garnish, the next chef has company. Forget Ratatouille. This is Rat Ollie, the sequel nobody asked for. A pan that's seen wars, toast that never stood a chance, and rodents auditioning as sous chefs. If flavor doesn't kill you, the ambience just might.
तुम लोग बनाओ इतना सिखा दिया खाने का अब तो आने बनाओ चला लिया.
Yet experiments did not stop there. Soda joined the menu. Nothing about bubbles meeting heat feels right. One sizzling pan, one fizzy twist. And suddenly Coke isn't just for drinking, it's for daring your intestines to survive the remix. Fine dining, more like fine dying. While soda-fueled disaster, rodents-fueled chaos in the next scene. Picture dough making turned into pest control, except the pests win. Rats nibbling and running the show like unpaid interns. Hygiene left the building, and now dough has co-authors with tails. Michelin stars? Try Mickey's scars. If rats shocked you, feet take it to another level. Bananas weren't mashed, they were stomped like grapes at a medieval wine festival. Except no bottles, no vintage, just a future of regret. Every step echoes with germs, and trust me, no smoothie deserves that kind of trauma. While bananas faced chaos, cashews suffered the encore. Juice making turned into toe choreography, rhythmically stomping flavor out of sense. It is not thirst quenching, it is nightmare fuel in liquid form. If this is refreshment, then dehydration suddenly feels like the healthier alternative on the menu. And if drinks weren't cursed enough, the next dish stirs nightmares. No ladles, no spoons, just whole arms diving in. The broth did not simmer, it surrendered. It looks less like food and more like mud therapy. Hygiene took an unpaid vacation, and dignity never signed up for the recipe either. Unless broth already scared you, knives turned into acrobatics next. Feet holding sharp steel is not culinary skill. It is chaos theory in practice. Every slice feels like gravity is in charge. This is not beef preparation. It is a circus audition with lawsuits waiting in the background. Where hands vanished, Grease wrote the sequel. The oil looks older than patience, frying meat that deserved better. No spatulas, no tools, only reckless confidence. Flavor does not scream smoky, it whispers fossil fuel. Arteries everywhere quietly update their wills while bravery pretends to be seasoning. Whereas grease poisoned taste, grime crowned the next act. The kitchen does not whisper dirty, it yells crime scene. Cobwebs in attendance, dust in charge, and despair serving as garnish. This is not cooking, it is punishment. Hunger quietly packs its bags and dignity calls the nearest taxi. Whenever filth tried harder, dough drowned under arms. A watery mix became a swimming pool for elbows, hygiene nowhere to be seen. It is not kneading, it is freestyle bacteria Olympics. The recipe sounds less like bread and more like an eviction notice to your immune system. Although dough was tragic, bread finished the insult. One hand cradled it, the other shoved in fillings as though gloves were myths. Respect for the loaf? Non-existent. This is not a sandwich, it is humiliation for carbs everywhere. A crime scene dressed up as lunch. Even though bread ended in disgrace, potatoes refuse to be humble. Crunch meets crawling persistence. And suddenly side dishes feel like horror shows. Appetite pulls the plug before the first bite, leaving only paranoia to season the silence. Even salt looks uncomfortable in this company. Since potatoes weren't cursed enough, dough entered the battlefield. Uninvited guests ran the show, hands pretending nothing happened. It is confidence so loud, even disgust took notes. Recipes turned into reruns of nightmares, where hygiene packed its bags and dignity called in sick. Then just when confidence seemed unshakable, one sneeze rewrote the script. A storm in the palm, generously shared without pause. No sanitizer, no shame, just instant serving with a garnish of denial. Appetite didn't walk away, it sprinted. Even common sense filed an official complaint.
He had good time.
Next, from sneezes to cocktails, rebellion poured in. Hands stirred liquid ambition like spoons were myths. Drinks transformed into dares, each swirl whispering regret. Thirst considered a restraining order. Hydration filed for divorce. This is not refreshment, it is roulette in a glass. After cocktails gambled, food doubled the stakes. Bare fingers orchestrated chaos, flavors colliding like unpaid bills. It was not mixing, it was vandalism disguised as cooking. Hunger looked on, shook its head, and quietly walked out the door. Meanwhile, chaos on the plate left thirst with darker punishment. Drinks prepared beside despair's favorite swimming pool, with hands bold enough to pretend all was fine. Hydration no longer promised life, only questions. Even parched throats agreed, "We're good." Soon after gutters drained hope, oil carried the torch. Chips lifted barehanded, grease baptized into sin. Hygiene was mocked, patience humiliated. The meal spoke in whispers of regret, every bubble reminding taste buds of the funeral ahead. Appetite never RSVP'd. Eventually, as oil cursed the pot, chicken sank deeper. Arms submerged like volunteers in a lost cause, while ancient Greece sang funeral hymns. It wasn't marination, it was surrender. Even courage couldn't pretend this was edible. Fear sat at the table instead. Later, when the frying stopped, serving mocked the recovery. One hand balancing food, the other clinging to nylon as if sanitation was an optional extra. Presentation mocked itself, pride disappeared, and appetite signed its resignation letter. Nothing wrapped this moment but pure chaos. As if human errors weren't enough, pests reclaimed the throne. Leaping without permission, sprinting across counters, they crowned themselves chefs. It was no longer cooking, it was carnival. Hunger hid in the corner, terrified, while dignity caught the next train out. Then eggs entered, but hope had already left. Oil darker than secrets bubbled. Pans whispered defeat, and fingers poked shamelessly. Breakfast wasn't comforting, it was condemning. Each crack echoed with betrayal, and even toast knew better than to show up. Where eggs broke trust, dough crushed pride. Feet stepped in, stomping dreams into paste. This wasn't kneading, it was humiliation on repeat. Every imprint screamed disaster. Every press erased appetite. Bread deserved poetry, not footprints soaked in regret.
यहाँ पे टोस्ट बनाने वाली, कुरकुरे बनाने वाली फैक्ट्री में ये जो है पैर से मड़ाई कर रहा है। कितना घिनौना लग रहा है यार, कितना गंदा लग रहा है। चल आज इसको मैं मार।
While dough was tragic, serving proved hopeless. Hands scooping meals in dirt, environment whispering surrender. Nothing about this act suggested nourishment, only punishment disguised as generosity. Even flies looked less guilty than the chef's confidence. And when flies arrived, appetite officially gave up. They perched like regulars, hovering with entitlement. Plates became airports, food transformed into runway strips. No seasoning could disguise this takeover. Hunger didn't leave quietly, it ran screaming for the exit. Still, after flies turned meals into airports, frosting sank even lower. Hands painted chaos instead of sweetness, confidence thicker than sugar. The environment whispered defeat, decorations mocked themselves. This wasn't celebration, it was sabotage in disguise. Appetite didn't clap, it hid in the corner. Meanwhile, sweetness wasn't the only lie, sweat joined the recipe. Fabric doubled as napkin, pots echoed despair, and the menu read like punishment. Each stir carried more questions than answers, more fear than flavor. Appetite didn't just hesitate, it called for backup.
मजा ना आए खाने में, रिपोर्ट लगा दो थाने में। पति लगा दो। मजा ना आए खाने
Soon, frying joined the tragedy with its own orchestra. Buzzing background singers hovered freely, pans screamed history, and white mystery became the lead act. Appetite didn't wait for the finale, it packed mid-show. Even hunger cringed, whispering, "Not this time." Next up, service offered no comfort, only surrender. Containers tired of their role, hands moving boldly, environment laughing in denial. Food didn't arrive with pride, it arrived escorted by shame. Appetite didn't RSVP, it blocked the number. Then creativity lost the plot entirely. Pressure came from unexpected tools, weight crushed more than ingredients, and pride was trampled alongside flavor. This wasn't innovation, it was intimidation. Appetite didn't lean in, it ran out of patience. Later, pastries followed as casualties of neglect. Machines coughed history, hands paraded confidence, and floors whispered shame into the dough. Nothing about the process promised joy, only regret wrapped in crust. Appetite didn't dream dessert, it woke up terrified. Instead of redemption, meat entered with arrogance. Bare fingers displayed ownership, pride replaced precision, and dignity checked out mid-shift. Appetite didn't crave protein, it prayed for distance. Even flavor wanted to file a complaint.
Mr. Lava Lava, ooh. Mr. Lava Lava, ooh. Power the lava, ooh. Our master, whatever master, the duster, master, Mr. Lava, ooh.
Following arrogance, oil rose as accomplice. Dark pools of persistence bubbled threats. Surfaces groaned, and taste lost its argument. Appetite didn't call this smoky, it called it cursed. Even courage wouldn't volunteer a bite. Then meals were mixed with bare conviction. Hands blurred into spoons, confidence shouted over silence, and texture fought for its life. Appetite didn't bother arguing, it walked away insulted. Even desperation had standards. After spoons were abandoned, drinks surrendered too. Fingers dipped freely, surfaces glistened with denial, and hydration quit mid-shift. Appetite didn't chase refreshment, it dodged disaster. Even thirst said, "I'll pass." As liquids failed, service and filth crowned the disaster. Pots begged for retirement, floors became witnesses, and meals lined up as suspects. Appetite didn't question it, it sentenced itself to fasting. From fasting temptations, mixtures turned criminal. Waters clouded with uncertainty, solids drowned without protest, and confidence stirred regret into every scoop. Appetite didn't rebel loudly, it ghosted quietly. Even hunger filed for leave. Before hope recovered, tanks betrayed hydration. Opaque liquid posed proudly, containers broadcast despair, and refreshment died nameless. Appetite didn't sip, it stared in disbelief. Even parched lips said no. Where tanks whispered, pots shouted louder. Textures collided under bare audacity. Flavors silenced by hands too bold. Appetite didn't welcome variety, it filed a complaint. Even courage hid under the table. Again, meals endured crushing humiliation. Palms pressed stories into silence, flavors bruised under confidence, and pride was uninvited. Appetite didn't rise to the occasion, it collapsed under the weight of denial. Soon after, toilets replaced plates without shame. Miniature thrones paraded as bowls, and meals marched through mockery. Appetite didn't protest, it fainted. Even curiosity regretted showing up. Once toilets mocked appetite, flies mocked patience. They pirouetted mid-air, settled with pride, and claimed ownership. Appetite didn't complain, it evacuated instantly. Even denial looked embarrassed. After flies finished their dance, mutton faced betrayal. Yet betrayals piled as servings mocked hygiene. Fingers announced themselves as utensils, pride paraded without caution, and meals sighed with exhaustion. Appetite didn't reach out, it retreated. Even hunger stayed silent. And next up, in this stretch, intestines arrived decorated with chaos. Flies paraded openly, textures surrendered, and dignity tapped out. Appetite didn't fight, it forfeited. Even shadows refused to linger near. After intestines surrendered, milk betrayed dignity next. A lively surprise swam confidently, turning refreshment into mockery. Appetite didn't sip, it recoiled. Even shadows whispered warnings, refusing to linger near. This wasn't a drink, it was a dare. Disguised as hospitality, chaos poured into fragile courage. Beyond spoiled drinks, mixtures screamed louder. Hands collided with ingredients like spoons were outlawed. Rhythm reckless, confidence blinding. Appetite didn't cheer, it sulked in silence. Even patience looked disgusted, dragging pride away. This wasn't cooking, it was vandalism disguised as energy. Chaos applauded with greasy palms. Further into despair, fruit offered betrayal. Juice squeezed bare, seeds tossed into shadows, buckets mocked cleanliness. Appetite didn't dream refreshment, it begged for escape. Even thirst muttered curses, preferring drought. This wasn't nourishment, it was sabotage masked as effort, confidence glowing brighter than reason's last candle. Soon afterwards, service dragged pride through dirt. Surroundings coughed neglect, hands pretended to shine, yet food sighed under defeat. Appetite didn't argue, it walked out without tipping. Even hunger refused seconds, disgust snatching the check. This wasn't hospitality, it was punishment disguised as generosity, filth pretending to smile. Eventually, bread was mocked into disgrace. Toasters became accomplices. Hands disrespected warmth, and pride shrank beneath dust. Appetite didn't crave comfort, it gagged. Even butter would have refused the assignment, shrinking from shame. This wasn't breakfast, it was betrayal in slices, flavor murdered before courage finished its sentence. After betrayal, soups drowned in misery. Cauldrons coughed despair, ladles pretended justice, and bowls hosted sorrow. Appetite didn't sip, it cringed in silence. Even salt kept distance, horrified by the performance. This wasn't broth, it was a eulogy in liquid form, chaos ladled with stubborn arrogance. Meanwhile, mixtures swallowed reason whole. Arms plunged recklessly, liquid lost its dignity, and flavor screamed for rescue. Appetite didn't whisper hunger, it declared fasting. Even thirst blinked nervously, plotting escape. This wasn't seasoning, it was surrender in motion, chaos applauding proudly in infectious rhythm. At once, chicken dissolved under insult, hands peeled without hesitation, buckets begged for rest, and dough absorbed shame. Appetite didn't wait for serving, it bolted. Even courage deserted its post, fleeing disgrace. This wasn't cooking, it was desecration disguised as tradition. Pride folded into trembling silence.
Exclusive mix by DJ Harsh.
Subsequently, sauces collapsed into chaos. Palms drowned flavor, rhythm mocked utensils, and bowls surrendered helplessly. Appetite didn't admire the craft, it mourned. Even courage gagged at the sight, abandoning taste. This wasn't preparation, it was sabotage wrapped in audacity, recklessness applauding louder than dignity's cry. Thereafter, decency shattered with a gesture. Confidence touched places pride never returned from, then reached into food shamelessly. Appetite didn't hesitate, it screamed. Even denial gave up, fleeing disgust. This wasn't daring, it was disgrace in motion. Hygiene murdered quietly while arrogance laughed behind curtains. Following disgrace, rolls collapsed under fingers. Sheets folded shame, fillings gasped beneath pressure, and presentation mocked itself. Appetite didn't wait for frying, it escaped. Even taste buds revolted, spitting disgust. This wasn't craft, it was cruelty, hidden as effort. Flavors crying louder than pride's silence. Eventually, dough endured feet and fists. Bodies pressed audacity, textures collapsed, and confidence masqueraded as tradition. Appetite didn't desire delicacy, it recoiled. Even memories shivered, scorning sight. This wasn't heritage, it was humiliation served raw. Boldness silencing reason while pride drowned under reckless rhythm. Then liquids mocked thirst once again. Hands stirred contagion, containers laughed with grime, and refreshment died instantly. Appetite didn't sip, it prayed. Even thirst choked on disgust, rejecting revival. This wasn't drinking, it was danger disguised as habit, denial dressed up in false celebration. Meanwhile, rags crowned the performance with shame. Cloth sagged heavy, surfaces wept, and food trembled beneath insult. Appetite didn't hover, it ran. Even disgust blinked twice, refusing touch. This wasn't protection, it was plague in fabric form, boldness folding over hygiene's grave. Beyond disgrace, fruits drowned in violation. Hands twisted pulp, buckets screamed decay, and thirst wept silently. Appetite didn't whisper craving, it cursed. Even sweetness gave up, hiding its face. This wasn't refreshment, it was regret disguised as juice. Chaos bottled with stubborn pride. Afterwards, soups dragged pride into shame. Pots groaned history, liquids mocked life, and spoons trembled under denial. Appetite didn't wait, it vanished. Even steam refused to rise, embarrassed. This wasn't warmth, it was punishment disguised as serving. Pride stewed into silence. Shortly after, dough met liquid torment. Streams drowned dignity, hands pressed harder, and flavor sighed painfully. Appetite didn't lean closer, it left. Even hunger gagged in horror, sickened. This wasn't fusion, it was failure poured thick, silence echoing where laughter should have lived. Once dough collapsed, drinks mocked appetite again. Palms stirred chaos, fruits wept defeat, and liquid smelled like sorrow. Appetite didn't linger, it sprinted. Even parched throats refused revival, horrified. This wasn't refreshment, it was ruin hiding in sweetness, courage disappearing before touch. Further down, greens were stolen from gutters. Hands scooped shamelessly, leaves sagged in filth, and dignity hid. Appetite didn't protest, it collapsed. Even nutrition cried betrayal, turning bitter. This wasn't harvesting, it was horror camouflaged as effort, pride reduced to garbage garnish. And if you think that was filthy, watch how oil aged into torment. Wings buzzed louder than utensils, legs paraded across surfaces, and appetite resigned mid-shift. Even flies seemed bored, dragging bees into overtime. This wasn't baking, it was a festival where hunger packed its bags early, joy completely absent everywhere. After oil staged its funeral, dough hosted a carnival for pests. Wings buzzed louder than utensils, legs paraded across surfaces, and appetite resigned mid-shift. Even flies seemed bored, dragging bees into overtime. This wasn't baking, it was a festival where hunger packed its bags early. Past the buzzing parade, drinks offered no escape. Hands dove recklessly, liquids surrendered pride, and appetite shrank into silence. Even thirst whispered, "Not today," choosing drought instead. This wasn't refreshment, it was regret wearing confidence as cologne, chaos disguised as hospitality, a toast no soul could swallow. Soon after, ice melted into despair. Streets hummed with filth. Water whispered betrayal, and appetite fainted at the first scoop. Even summer refused seconds, scorning relief. This wasn't cooling, it was contamination sold as comfort. Pride dissolving faster than cubes, shame dripping into every hollow corner. Following icy disasters, tricks ruined trust further. Mouths doubled as utensils, meals welcomed uninvited extras, and appetite gagged instantly. Even humor bowed out, ashamed to laugh. This wasn't entertainment, it was sabotage parading as skill. Boldness too blind to notice dignity's funeral, comedy smothered beneath audacity's rotten stage. Then dough drowned in disgrace. Pools mocked purity, textures collapsed into silence, and appetite vanished before serving. Even courage packed its belongings, retreating in shame. This wasn't preparation, it was humiliation disguised as tradition. Water writing a eulogy across sinking dreams, flavor washed away like betrayal.
आलू की सिक रही है, दाल की बिक रही है। ऐसा ना हिसाब से दूंगा, फैल गया तो बटरता नहीं, शेर बोलना पड़ेगा। लो पकड़ो हाथ में, मैं आ गया। अरे यार दबाना तो ठीक हो यूं करके, बच्चों का लगे हंस के देते हैं, बता दो रहा हूं।
From dough's humiliation, oils took their turn. Golden hope dissolved into grime. Blocks pushed downward like pride itself. Appetite didn't linger, it cursed loudly. Even flavor abandoned the scene, choking on despair. This wasn't cooking, it was cruelty hiding beneath grease, history repeating through bubbles of ruin. After grease mocked flavor, mixtures crumbled under arrogance. Hands tossed oddities together, machines sighed hopelessly, and appetite stared in disbelief. Even chaos winced at the outcome, too shocked to laugh. This wasn't innovation, it was vandalism camouflaged as creation, boldness louder than reason's whispers, disaster marching confidently without pause. Shortly after, oil soured the stage again. Chips gasped beneath filth, heat spat curses, and appetite checked out immediately. Even crunch deserted pride, refusing to echo. This wasn't frying, it was failure disguised as crispness, disaster bubbling louder than flavor, hopelessness crunching louder than any forgotten satisfaction. Then mixtures swallowed hope entirely, containers filled with denial, palms rinsed sins inside, and appetite didn't argue, it left. Even dignity groaned, weary of repetition. This wasn't cleaning, it was contamination rewarded. Germs applauding as spectators, shame bubbling like applause nobody dared to enjoy. Moving forward, kitchens abandoned all shame. Walls wept filth, flames coughed despair, and appetite sprinted at first glance. Even hunger gagged, silenced by despair. This wasn't cooking, it was chaos constructing ruins. Defeat served with confidence, a banquet written for nightmares, not for meals. Next, bread drowned in sorrow, bowls sloshed despair, hands pressed shame into dough, and appetite didn't hope, it retreated. Even the crust refused to rise, humiliated by conditions. This wasn't baking, it was grief kneaded with arrogance, silence bubbling instead of yeast, disgrace baked into every corner. After the dough wilted, milk spoiled trust entirely. Buzzing wings crowned the performance, surfaces sticky with despair, and appetite gagged before sipping. Even sweetness rejected involvement, embarrassed to exist. This wasn't nourishment, it was nausea in disguise, poured confidently into shame. Every drop announcing betrayal with arrogance. Thereafter, plates became playgrounds. Feet pressed boldly, knives obeyed gravity, and appetite collapsed in disgust. Even stubborn pride whispered defeat, ashamed of the spectacle. This wasn't technique, it was tragedy playing chef. Audacity heavier than metal, a circus of ruin parading as creativity. Soon plates returned for another humiliation. Pressure crushed meals beneath reckless weight, dignity screamed quietly, and appetite resigned. Even silence refused to stand witness, ashamed to linger. This wasn't preparation, it was punishment pretending to be skill, pride ground into dust, all decency smashed into ashes. Later, flatbreads betrayed heritage. Hands pressed shamelessly, dirt crowned surfaces, and appetite wept silently. Even hunger turned its back, horrified by tradition's mockery. This wasn't comfort, it was catastrophe folded thin, audacity louder than yeast, memory of pride ripped apart without hesitation. From bread to batter, despair never slowed. Grease bubbled history, pans shrieked shame, and appetite disappeared instantly. Even crunch refused participation, disgust replacing flavor. This wasn't frying, it was failure repeated loudly. Tradition choked beneath grime, sorrow frying deeper than any flavor dared to linger. Meanwhile, flies crowned another tragedy. Wings pirouetted freely, pots hummed decay, and appetite shrank into hiding. Even smoke gagged at the performance, embarrassed to linger. This wasn't seasoning, it was sabotage flying proudly. Ruin perched openly, an orchestra of pests singing defeat without shame. Not long after, meals faced brutal collapse. Hands shredded structure, surfaces moaned defeat, and appetite watched in horror. Even taste refused alignment, ashamed of its role. This wasn't cooking, it was cruelty delivered raw, silence replacing flavor, destruction rehearsed louder than hope could ever echo. Then eggs drowned inside disgrace. Oils blackened pride, fingers mocked texture, and appetite gagged immediately. Even breakfast abandoned its purpose, humiliated. This wasn't nourishment, it was nausea masquerading as food, courage running away, dignity breaking faster than shells ever could under weight. After eggs collapsed, mixtures mocked taste again. Palms stirred boldly, yolks whispered shame, and appetite didn't argue, it retreated. Even pride deserted the bowl, humiliated. This wasn't creativity, it was catastrophe rehearsed. Hunger fainting before the show, hope scrambling into corners far away from sight. After mixtures mocked taste, ice arrived carrying its own humiliation. Hands sculpted recklessly, water betrayed trust. An appetite didn't flirt, it vanished. Even thirst looked confused, hesitating. This wasn't refreshment, it was regret molded cold, hygiene drowned nearby, flavor gasped for dignity, and silence screamed louder than every crunch that followed. Finally, when hygiene surrenders, armpits cook their own finale. Armpits crowned disgrace. Pans absorbed humiliation, and appetite left forever. Even laughter silenced itself. Horrified. This wasn't skill, it was sin performed proudly. Tradition mocked until silence screamed. A finale soaked in shame rather than accomplishment. Applause buried under disgust.